Hello YouTube, welcome back to another Star Wars Armada ship review video. Today we're going to be talking about the Imperial Super Star Destroyer. Bit of an odd choice this, I know, mostly because I wanted to talk about ships that are either less frequently played or frequently misplayed. And Super Star Destroyer, the only argument for it being not frequently played is because people don't want to spend $200 to purchase the Super Star Destroyer expansion pack, which I can totally understand. $200 for a plastic starship, that's really investing into a game. So making a video on it is either useless in one regard because people who have the Super Star Destroyer are playing it a lot to justify that $200 purchase, or they haven't spent the $200 because they don't want to spend $200 on a plastic starship, and therefore this review is completely useless to them. Either way, odd choice. But the reason I want to talk about the Super Star Destroyer is because when I do see it played, I all too often see the same type of build being employed. That being a build with Jerjerrod, Ravager, Callus, Link Turbo Laser Towers, quad laser turrets, and usually like H9 Turbo Lasers. Some variation can be introduced. The version I like to run, I like to use Intel Officer because he combos pretty nicely with H9 Turbo Lasers. And then I'll run a CommsNet Gazanti, and then I'll run a Gazanti with Minister Tua, Electronic Countermeasures, Slicer Tools, and Suppressor. Where I played this is called Slicer Tua. It's just a really, really annoying and effective way to screw with your opponent's command dials and defense tokens. But in general, this is the sort of list you'll run. I see people swap these out for 2 Gazantis with repair crews, or 1 Gazanti with repair crews, 1 Gazanti with CommsNet, and then you can add some extra stuff onto your SSD here, like heavy ion emplacements. But in general, this is the sort of build I see far, far too often on Super Star Destroyers. And I don't want to see that anymore. I want to see more interesting builds. So let's talk about some. Before we get into them, I'll do this a little out of order from last time. I'll talk about the on-table maneuvering with a Super Star Destroyer first. The reason I'm doing that is because it's not terribly complicated. As you can see, the Super Star Destroyer has no yautics at all, anywhere, which means that someone like Jerjerrod, or alternatively Admiral Piet, becomes an absolute must. Some people run Admiral Ozzel. I think Piet's stronger. I think Piet's stronger than Ozzel, and on a Super Star Destroyer, Jerjerrod just blows both of them out of the water. But in general, it's all about making sure the front end of your ship is pointed towards the enemy ships. So if we take this MC-75 as the entire enemy fleet, you want that front end pointed at that enemy fleet as much as you can. So what I like to do is I'll oftentimes deploy my Super Star Destroyer off to one side, slightly off kilter here. Reason for this is if my opponent deploys his fleet over here, well, usually Jerjerrod, so I can turn and get myself pointed in the right direction. Usually, in fact, when I deploy my ship, I'll have it just ever so slightly tilted to one side. That way, if my opponent comes down really fast over here, my turns over are a lot easier, and I can keep my opponent's fleet in my front arc for much longer. And if my opponent deploys on this side, well, he's already in my front arc. Maybe I can get lucky and trap one of his ships directly against my front base. One quick thing to note about the deployment with the Super Star Destroyer, as you can see, it's got this gigantic base here. This gigantic base will not entirely fit in your deployment zone, as you can see. So with the Super Star Destroyer, the rules state that so long as any part of your base is touching the back of your deployment zone, that is legally deployed. So if I just put it in here and just angle it ever so slightly so the back corner there is touching the back of my deployment zone, I'm legal. So really, not much else to talk about maneuverability-wise here. Deploy it, keep front end pointed towards enemy, Don't go more than speed. Don't go more than speed 1 unless you absolutely have to, simply because you can't maneuver, so flying off the board is a very real danger. Really, in fact, the only time you should be going speed 2 is if, 1, you need to catch up to an enemy, if an enemy ship is running away from you, and you need to catch up in order to get it in range, or if you've got something like an MC-30 right against your rear arc and you need to go speed 2 in order to get out of close range. Pretty fringe cases, so in general, stick to speed 1. Staying at speed 1's good, because if you want to run something like quad battery turrets, you'll almost always be able to utilize those. So, let's talk about list building. Not going to spend too much time talking about what's called Jerry Ravager or Jerry SSD, simply because if you've played an SSD or played against people with Superstar Destroyers, you've seen this list done to death. This is my personal take on it. There are many variations, many different changes you can do. I know some people, because you've got linked turbo laser towers and quad laser turrets, you can swap out Agent Callus for something like Captain Brunson. Intel Officer H9s is the combo I like to use when sniping enemy ships, removing those defense tokens or preventing them from using those defense tokens on key turns or key attacks. Not a whole ton here that's super fun to play for me, having played or played against this list so many times. So we're going to talk about lists that aren't this list. Starting with a Sloane build. Now, you know what you're saying. Holy crap, why are you talking about Sloane builds? Everyone plays Sloane builds. Sloane builds are probably the meta right now. Yes, they are the meta right now, at least where I play. But that's a specific Sloane build. Namely, you put Admiral Sloane on an Onager, and then you send in a Quasar with either Squall or usually what I play and what I see played most often, Pursuant. And then your squadrons remove all your opponent's defense tokens, while the Onager does a ton of damage to your enemy ships at extreme range. But let's talk about this list for a second. We have Agent Callus. This is a bit more of a gimmick build. This is not a super competitive build by any stretch of the imagination. If you want a super competitive Sloane build, go to the previously mentioned Onager. No, this is more of a gimmick build with just murder all the squadrons. So we have Agent Callus to give more DACA against enemy squadrons, since a lot of people like to run aces. Flight Commander, because we only have one offensive retrofit slot, and we're going to be putting expanded hangar bay there. So Flight Commander allows you to get in range of your squadrons in order to activate them. Damage Control Officer, honestly, this card should just be stapled to your Superstar Destroyer ship card. You've probably got more than one copy of Damage Control Officer, and if you do, just staple it to the SSD card. You'll be doing yourself a favor in the long run, trust me. It is that good. What DCO means is that when you resolve the Contained Defense effect, you can prevent the attacker from resolving any critical effects. Normally, the Contained Defense token only affects normal critical effects. So, if you've just got like this exact Superstar Destroyer build, you roll a critical hit on one of your blue dice against an enemy ship. The enemy ship can spend a Contained Defense token to cancel that critical effect. They still take the damage, but they don't take the face-up damage card. If, however, you're going up against a ship with something like XX9 turbo lasers, or if it's something like a MC-30 or a Gladiator or an MC-75 that has an ordnance upgrade slot, something like assault proton torpedoes or assault concussion missiles, Damage Control Officer negates the effect of APTs or ACMs. That's pretty huge for a Superstar Destroyer, because things like an MC-30 with admonition and Lando, or a Gladiator with Demolisher, or Radiston MC-75 with APTs and X-Rax, those face-up damage cards are going to be the most reliable way to deal with a Superstar Destroyer. And forcing your opponent to have to chew through your shields, 6 shields on the front, 3 shields on all the sides, That's a lot of shields to chew through. When you force your opponent to have to physically chew through them, it becomes a lot harder to kill the Super Star Destroyer. So Damage Control Officer, in my opinion, is an auto-take. All fighters follow me. I just put this on here because, hey, we're running a bunch of TIE fighters and Dengar in this list. Why not get them all up to speed 5? Flight controllers, more anti-squadron DACA. Expanded hangar bay, running this because I think it's in this list because the base is so large on the SSD, better than boosted comms. Leading shots, because we want to be able to reroll our shots against enemy ships so we can actually kill them after our squadrons have set them up to be killed. And Annihilator, because this is a gimmicky anti-squadron build. In terms of our squadrons for the Sloane list, this is what I view as a fairly standard Sloane build here for squadrons. 8 squadrons, 3 TIE fighters, 5 aces. This sort of list is pretty effectively punished by Jerry SSD. But again, we're not looking for a very competitive build. We're looking for one that's a little bit more fun. Something that when you go out and you play some Armada with your friends at your local game store, that it's fun to play. Not necessarily super competitive that you're looking to take to Worlds. So, Sienna Ree, Valen Rudor, Super Friends combo. Howl Runner, Mauler Mythel, Dengar and Mauler, the Mauler Splash. And then TIE Fighter squadrons because they're cheap squadrons. So this build can be a lot of fun. I'd recommend trying it out. Again, this is a theory. This is not a super competitive build. In fact, I've only seen one Sloane build run on a Super Star Destroyer, which is a shame because I'd like to see more. And this is one that I've kind of more branched off of that. This is very much a more theory-crafted build, but theory-crafted to be a little more fun. A little more different. Well, it's another different build, except this one I've seen played multiple times, and it's a very strong, fun build, is the unkillable Super Star Destroyer build. Gimmick with this is you're running an interdictor with projection experts, grav shift reroute, targeting scramblers, and the interdictor title. On the Super Star Destroyer, we have Piet as the commander. Piet, I still think Jared Gerard is better. We're at 388 points. Is the difference between a 12-point bid and an 11-point bid that big? In my opinion, no. I put Piet in this build just so that we could bring Admiral Piet. Captain Brunson, yeah. Being able to remove, say if your opponent brings in a bunch of B-Wings, taking out a black hit crit from an attack from squadrons or just from an enemy ship, always good. And with Captain Brunson, you will always find yourself in range in distance 1 to 2 of an obstacle. Damage Control Officer, again, it should be staple to the card. Intel Officer, running the Intel Officer H9's combo on here just for some anti-ship potential. You can absolutely run something like a Link Turbo Laser Towers or something like that if you want some anti-squadron shots. Gunnery teams, because your arcs are huge, make the most out of them, I say. Leading shots, reroll your hit rolls against ships. And then we have Ravager here, because Ravager is just an amazing title. Which now that I think about it in this build, since we're probably going to be stacking concentrate fire commands, yeah, we really should run Jared Gerard. Because otherwise, if you want to get that nav command, you'll need a Gazanti, I should say, not GR75. Empire doesn't have GR75s. Empire has Gazantis. You'll need a Gazanti to feed tokens to your Super Star Destroyer, and there's no room for one in this build. So Jared Gerard is the commander. On the interdictor here, interdictors, it's not what you would normally use an interdictor for in most builds. Most builds, you take an interdictor. If we have a Star Destroyer here, the interdictor is the ship that you take you park it right in front of a Star Destroyer, and it just brawls. And it doesn't die because of targeting scramblers and Captain Brunson. Putting Captain Brunson on the Super Star Destroyer because it's worth a lot more points, and this isn't a brawler. This is meant to be a health pack for the Super Star Destroyer. Projection experts, putting 2 shields on any arc, that just automatically heals up any damage that you just took with Jaredrod +1. Graph Shift Reroute, again, this is just an amazing card. This is it for 2 points, especially with the Super Star Destroyer, being able to put the obstacles in an ideal place so they're not sitting right beneath your Super Star Destroyer all game is amazing. Targeting Scramblers. Targeting Scramblers, I think a lot of people forget that they can be used on other ships. The text for Targeting Scrambler says, while a friendly ship at distance 1 to 3 is defending at close range, during the spend defense token step, you may exhaust this card to force the attacker to reroll up to 4 dice of your choice. This Targeting Scramblers doesn't just apply to the Interdictor. So, putting it with the Super Star Destroyer, being able to mitigate a lot of damage that way at close range is amazing. And then the Interdictor title, because, well, being able to targeting scramblers twice a turn is really, really strong. So, this is a list. It's a very slight variation of one I've seen. The one I saw seeing it wasn't running the H9's Intel Officer combo, though it absolutely could. But that about wraps it up. Just wanted to talk about some Super Star Destroyer list ideas here that aren't the Jared-Gerard Ravager overpowered Star Dreadnought Assault prototype combo that I see far, far too often. So let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know what you think about my ideas on more fun, more different list ideas for the Super Star Destroyer down in the comments below. Until next time.